Fragrant Emilie's biggest pros and cons. That's what I'm here to tell you today. My name is Juice, and let's get into it. Emilie is a rather special addition to Genshin Impact's meta, since she fills a niche that no other Dendro character has dared to touch with even a 10-foot pole. Burning! We all thought Dia would be the 5-star to bridge the Pyro-Dendro gap, yet that never ended up being the case. The Pyro-Dendro interaction on the whole has been completely ignored in Genshin Impact, gaining little to no exposure throughout the entire Dendro era, and in Fontaine, where we got basically 0 new Dendro units up until now due to Dendro fatigue, yeah, Burning never really had a chance to break into the meta. There is Burnmelt Ganyu, Toma Burgeon, and pretty much nothing else. Until now. Emilie decided that she'd finally tap in on this niche which has been so long deserted, which is really neat. She's adding more variety into the game and is allowing for a new option that keeps us from getting bored of the same old, at last giving us a Dendro character who isn't all about Hyperbloom or Bloom. Plus, the role she fills is something that no other meta Dendro can. Alhaitham, for example, is one of Genshin Impact's most cheap and flexible characters. He works in quite literally every Dendro team except for Burning. Tighnari specializes in Spread too, and all other Dendro characters are entirely support-based. Have a look at the current Dendro roster yourself. So, Emilie is covering an aspect of the element that no other Dendro character currently can, resulting in her having a place in which she is undeniably a good option. And in my opinion, there is one key thing that every Genshin character needs in order to be a success, and that is having at least one best-in-slot use case. And if not best in slot, then at least a place in which they are a good option. Emilie is undeniably going to be the main reason you'd ever play Pyro-Dendro related teams, unless you really vibe with Thomas over here or something. Even if Emilie won't end up being the next be-all end-all meta character, you have to admit that it's pretty nice how Emilie is essentially reviving what was thought to be a dead reaction. If I had a Mora for every time Fontaine looked at a dead reaction and randomly decided to revive it, I'd have 3 Mora, which is about as much as Zhongli has from a day-to-day basis, but it's still strange that it happened thrice. It also means that when you pull Emilie, since she's the first of her kind, it's very unlikely that she'll get power crept in her specific niche role. Instead, she's more likely to gain teammates that'll help out her kid over time and flesh out Burning as a team archetype. It's a different way to play, and while this isn't a huge pro for everyone, it certainly is for some people. So, remember when earlier I said that most of the Dendro roster is built up of supports? I'm gonna ask you to have a look at this roster once again. 2 DPSs, 1 dedicated driver, that is, quite frankly, garbage, and then a whole lot of support characters. Notice anything that we're missing? A Dendro Sub-DPS. Emilie is going to be our first. So with that being said, Emilie is going to be fleshing out the different types of Dendro characters that we have. Emilie will actually have a focus on doing decent sub-DPS numbers, which will be a grand refreshment after what felt like eons of waiting for a Dendro character who wasn't a support in any way, shape, or form. It's very rare for us to get a Dendro character that deals pretty good damage as well, since even the drivers aren't doing damage, they're just triggering cores. She's a very unique addition to the Dendro roster, and that seems to be the general motif of this character, being completely different from the rest of the cast. And by not being a complete DPS, she also manages to extend her shelf life. This is because she won't immediately be power crept the moment that a new Burning DPS comes along. Because instead, Emilie will work with them, solidifying herself as the premier Burning unit to pull for if you're interested in the future of the reaction. I think it's common knowledge at this stage that non-DPSs last way longer than DPSs when it comes to Primogem value, since the next big new DPS can easily outperform the last, whereas a good character who doesn't have to on-field immediately is granted far more flexibility and longevity within future teams. I invite you to see this next point as both a pro and a con, because while there are plenty of positives to this point, there are quite a few negatives which end up causing this to be a more neutral statement, so keep that in mind. The fact that Burning has basically never been touched before means that the reaction can basically only go up from here. Since Emilie's a sub-DPS, a support which boosts the power of her own damage will be good, and since she's a sub-DPS, say if a new Burning or Burgeon-based character were to come out, she would immediately be their best-in-slot teammate. So that means Emilie has plenty of potential. However, as great as this is, it's very dangerous to pull for a unit with the expectation that they will eventually come into the meta, especially for free-to-plays who can only pull for a new limited 5-star once every few patches. Pulling a whole 5-star just because they might get good can easily lead to wasted Primogems and some heavy disappointment. For example, Yunjin is a godsend for absolutely anybody who indulges in normal attacks, but how many good characters can actually use Yunjin? Keyword here is good. That's right, 1, Chlorand. And Yunjin released way back in 2.4, and Chlorand came out very recently in 4.7. Hypercarry Chlorand is a very solid Chlorand team, but Yunjin had to wait a whole 2 years until she finally got a decently meta use case. You could pull for Emilie and then end up waiting ages for Burning or Burgeon to get buffed, and then see that day basically never come. I do personally think that Kinich is going to revolve around Burning or Burgeon, but note that I'm just spitballing here. That's not been confirmed by Hoyoverse in the slightest whatsoever. It's more so just because Alhaitham is mega flexible, yet he does not cover Burning, which leads me to believe that Kinich will fill the missing piece of the puzzle. So, should Kinich simps pull for Emilie in preparation for Natlan's best boy, and quite frankly the best looking Natlan character? After all, the K in Kinich is for king. Well, no, because in my opinion, what will lead to much less disappointment is allowing the niche character to pass, getting all your other priority 5-stars, and the one that you're aiming for that wants said niche support, then pick up said niche support on their rerun. Always get a character after they gain value, not before, because then you'll actually have a specific reason to own them as opposed to just coping and saying, oh, trust me, eventually she'll be good. Yeah, buddy, so tell me, how do you know that? Alas, I don't want to sell this as a complete and utter con, because it is also a truth that Emilie can in fact only get better from here. After all, Kazuha released right before Inazuma, and everybody believed that he was just mid at the time of his release because he just looked like a 5-star Sucrose to everyone, despite the fact that he had none of Sucrose's flaws. And then he ended up being one of the most powerful characters in the meta for the entirety of the 2.x era's meta, still being a top 5 character to this day. Emilie right now is being overlooked, but there is a chance that within the nation of Pyro, Burning, come on, take a hint, she'll get a massive leg up. Not even just via Kinich, but dare I say even Movu Ika. Yet, at the end of the day, please don't fall victim to FOMO. I'm just trying to present all the potential possibilities here, which is what the point of these videos are all about in the first place. And this is because of one particular reason, which also leads us on to Emilie's first and most definitive con, the lack of teams that she's going to have on release. You see, while Emilie herself has quite the Burning-centric kit, no other character really gains much from playing Burning and much prefers to play in other more generalist Dendro teams. Nor do we have any other Burning-based Dendro buffers in the game as of now. All Dendro characters work around the other reactions, since Burning was sadly left to play on its own in the corner. The fact that Burning is so untapped simply leads to it also having literally nobody who makes it good as of now. It's quote-unquote untapped for a damn reason. So her teams are definitely not going to be making the most out of her when Emilie launches. The best way to say it is how Chiori is Navia's best in slot Geo partner, helping DPS-based Navia teams deal more overall team DPS compared to using Zhongli, Albedo, or TDDS Ningguang in the same slot. However, despite this, Chiori herself is not being taken full advantage of kit-wise due to the fact that Navia teams have no Geo constructs. Good for Navia, not so good for Chiori. The same will apply to Emilie's teams on her launch, good teams, though they won't take full advantage of Emilie's potential. And it's not even like Emilie makes Burning, as in the reaction itself, any good. Okay, hold up. What do I mean when I say this? Well, allow me to elaborate. Emilie wants Burning to make herself good. Emilie does not make Burning good. It's generally always going to be stronger to take units like Alhaitham, Nihida, Xiangling, and more into their own best-in-slot teams, in which they can do far more damage because those teams tend to their kits far better. Whereas if you're playing Burning, you are most definitely just trying to make Emilie feel good. For example, take a look at Nilou, who is currently on banners. She doesn't just make Bloom stronger, she literally modifies the reaction itself to make it stronger. Or even Navia, she uses Crystallize to her advantage by having it build up crystal shrapnel stacks for her. Emilie doesn't really do any such thing when it comes to Burning. It really is as simple as, make the grass crispy and my damage numbers go kaboom. Alright, neat I guess. There's plenty of characters like this, which is fine on its own. The reason why I take issue with it here is because of how burning is a much weaker reaction compared to something multiplicative like vaporize. So no, burning isn't saved because Emilie exists. Does it have a use case now? Yeah. Might it have some more potential use cases which involve Emilie? Oh, probably. Does this suddenly make burning an extremely meta reaction that's worth every player's time? No, not at all. Another thing that I want to point out with Emilie is that burning as a team will demand higher investment than most Dendro teams. One of the main things that Dendro has consistently been praised for no matter what is how damn cheap it is to run a Dendro team. Hyperbloom and Bloom teams generally don't cost all that much to hit the ground running, yet burning does actually want investment. This is because unlike those other reactions, burning isn't core based. All the damage has to come from the characters and their own kits. Emilie herself also demands the traditional ADC build of attack percent, Dendro damage percent, and crit percent, since elemental mastery isn't needed at all here. Burning itself is not the damage source of a team, so what good would any EM do? And if you're playing Burgeon, then it's usually the pyro unit that you build on EM, as they are most often the main Burgeon trigger. Even Emilie's own weapon is a crit-based weapon, which only further solidifies this point. So if you're a new player who heard that Dendro is extremely low investment friendly and you want to pick up some fresh new Dendro characters in order to clear the abyss easily, yeah, just know that Emilie definitely was not what they were talking about. Steer seriously clear of her if you're a new player. I feel like she's genuinely one of the worst first 5 stars that you could possibly pull for. I'm gonna keep this comm brief because it's entirely subjective and depends on how much you care for the new Natlan characters, but Emilie is coming out literally right before Natlan. Not even just a little bit before. Quite genuinely one of the last banners before we enter the brand new region. So regardless of how interesting her kit may be, will it really be as interesting as whatever we're going to see in the Nation of Pyro? That's up for you to decide at the end of the day. Emilie honestly looks really interesting, and despite all of her flaws and the fact that she's not going to have a lot of crazy comps on launch, I'm definitely going to be pulling for her since I like that they took such a unique angle with her. My god, I must have said the word unique like 50 times in this video. Anyways, I do think she's a really bad new player pull. If you've been playing the game for less than 6 months, I'd skip her if I were you. But if you're a long-time Genshin Impact veteran, I think what she offers is something that's just different enough to be interesting. Though remember, Natlan is coming up soon, and don't feel pressured to pull for a unit because they might be good in the future. Look at all those juicy new Natlan units. Are you really gonna skip all of them? Choose wisely and wait for the 5.0 livestream, in my opinion. Remember to join my Discord, which will be linked down below in both the pinned comment and description, and my Twitter will also be in both of those places if you'd like to follow. You can also see my Ko-Fi in those areas, and consider joining my new channel memberships if you want access to some cool emotes. More perks are coming soon. Other than that, follow my Twitch where I stream sometimes over at twitch.tv/JuiceChanYT if you want to catch me live. Hopefully this video was able to tell you Emilie's biggest pros and cons. This has been Juice, signing out, and the true best part about Emilie is that she'll always keep your team smelling nice. Digital perfume.